Okay, here we go.
First in Isaiah.
Yes. Hi, everybody. People can hear us and see us now, so no more hate
Yes.
speech, please, everybody. No, I'm kidding.
Give you
I'm
hate
kidding.
speech.
It's
You're
just
the only
hatred of
sensible
fantasy.
people I can talk to.
No,
these
we're
days.
good. We're yes. There's that was just a joke, a big funny joke. But anyway, so we have already. I'm trying to, you know, wrestle this into a slightly more orderly presentation. So we've already decided on the first three people who have something to share with the group. So we're going to stick with that, and we will start with our very good friend Serious Mind. You wanted to say something
thanks,
at the
guys.
start. Go for it.
Yeah, so people obviously have been coming to Steve's streams for I don't even know how long at this point. Like 8 years probably at least. But so you've all seen, most of you have seen my dogs. I've picked up the little ones and shown them to you various times, and many times because he was way too big to pick up easily. Flash, the big boy, the big giant Bichon that was trying to be the largest Bichon in the history of the world. My big cuddle bear, unfortunately, on May 12th, so 2 weeks from tomorrow, at 10:25 p.m., he died of old age. He had just turned 15 in April. In fact, I'm pretty sure I had him on the stream last time just because I was like, hey, he was 15.
Yeah.
He went downhill rapidly, like about the 2 weeks before. Suzanne was away for a lot of that time in France, but thankfully he survived long enough for her to come back. And then we took him to the vet on that Friday before, and he was not so great. But then he got even worse over the weekend, and we took him on Monday, and the doctor had said, well, if you put no one would blame you if you put him down now, and we didn't want to do that. But we took him to the dog park one last time, and my cousin Lori came over and we spent some time with him. And then that evening, he went. So thankfully we didn't have to actually put him down, unlike Blitzen and Molly.
Yeah.
But Suzanne was with him in his last moments, and so he wasn't alone. And but yeah, I wish I years ago. For years I thought about making a channel called Flash and Friends, because like when Blitzen and Molly were alive, Blitzen was like my dog, and Molly was Suzanne's dog, and we always considered Flash to be the world's dog because when people would come over, we're like, oh, look at Blitzen, and she'd be like, look at Flash, and look at Molly, and everyone's like, but Flash, And in fact, we even took him to a meet and greet in January. Of anyone familiar with the Husky Moon? They live here in New Jersey too. We went to a thing down in South Jersey, and even though our dogs were not the center of attention, or not supposed to be the center of attention, Flash became the center of attention. Everyone was amazed by him, because he was just he's a big boy, and he at his peak he weighed 50 pounds, which
Wow.
for a Bichon is
For a Bichon, that's huge. Yeah.
Because they're generally 12 to 15 pounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was everyone always loved him, and it's hit us harder than we expected. I'm finally able to talk about him without bursting into tears, although I'm kind of on the edge of it right now. But I figured it's sad news, and I was going to bring it up anyway. But I figured get the bad shit out now, so we could move toward happier stuff as we go, instead of closing with bad news.
Yeah. The nice thing.
I realize it doesn't help at all, but in a closed system in which we live, nothing's really lost.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't help at all now.
But,
I know from my own experience of losing pets and losing my brother and losing my parents, it doesn't help at the time. But it does help later. The energy is just transformed into something else.
Well, and basically we're trying to, at this point, we're trying to mostly just keep to the positive side, talk about all the fun moments and all the good moments, and all the time, like I said. So I know there's a lot of people that are here and also watching have seen Flash, and everyone seemed to like him.
Yeah.
So appreciate anyone who appreciated him and cared about him. Thank you over the years. He was a sweet boy, and he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's one of those things where like once the pain kind of subsides, as you know, Joe, you've had dogs, and anybody who's ever lost anybody, not just a pet, the hole is always there. You always miss them, but once you work your way through that, you have the memories and you have, you know, all the great stories you can tell about the dog or the cat or the person or, you know, whoever it is that you're missing. And that helps, but it sucks in the immediate aftermath.
I always say you'd start off as you know the difference between a jam donut and a round donut with a hole. I say after a death you become a round donut with the hole because you heal, but there's always a hole there.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Okay,
moving on to
with Flash, it's a big giant hole.
Yeah, because he was a big boy. Okay, Isaiah, you're next. Go for it.
Okay, so hey everybody.
Hey, Isaiah.
We were just talking about people owning guns.
Yeah.
And I have to disappoint everyone here, but I actually did buy a gun myself. And I think I mentioned that to Kara on the Ask Away. So here's
you've talked about it before,
yeah. Here's why I did this. I'm actually picking it up this week because I don't want to take the bus to pick it up because, well, first of all, guns aren't allowed on buses, and then and also I'm not really comfortable about having a weapon on a bus anyway. So I'm gonna take an Uber to go pick it up, but I bought it because, well, look what's going on in our society right now. You know, like right now we're witnessing the destruction of an entire people. And I live in a state where we have representatives that are openly calling for genocide of the Palestinians. There's a guy named Randy Fine who actually works at the Capitol here in Tallahassee who has said this. We have white women going around using the N-word and getting money from it. We have an elected politician saying that autistic people don't contribute. And
Several.
And yet I have a friend of mine who is worried about why am I buying a gun? And it's like, well, just look around. Just look around. So I'm not gonna. So you know, I don't have a gun to make myself feel powerful, but I do have a gun to make myself feel safe. And unfortunately, you know, much to the chagrin of Steve and Kara and others, that's the reality that I have to deal with, and I had to decide. Well, in the unlikely event that something comes that I have to defend myself, I rather have something where I stand a chance because a lot of my ancestors didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
So I rather just have one, you know. I don't know what's going on. This system is collapsing.
Yes.
I don't, and so I don't know what the end goal of that is going to be, but I need to make sure that I and my friends, you know, that includes people like Geek, that includes like other people on here, but you know, but most important, me and my friends will survive whatever this is.
Yeah.
So that's why I bought it.
Well,
No.
I'm not your dad, and it's not for me to approve or disapprove of the choices you make. I'll reiterate something that I know we said when you brought this up before, which is just be careful and, you know, take a safety course, take a class, learn how to use it properly, make sure you keep it stored safely, like, you know, take every precaution you can take and learn how to handle it the way it, you know, the way it's meant to be handled, so that at the very least you don't have to worry about anything happening accidentally.
I mean, people say I'm paranoid, but I mean, look what's going on. Look what's happening in our society. I refuse not to, you know, not be prepared for whatever's going to happen. I mean, if ICE agents are walking into I'm just going to be honest. If someone barges into my house and you're going to get shot. And you know, you're not going to tell me that criticism of Israel's you're just not going to do this to me. So
okay, well, I mean, just keep in mind, and again, this isn't to justify anything that anybody would do, but I mean, if ICE agents break into your house and you shoot them, the next thing that happens is they shoot you.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that doesn't fix anything. But I mean, but again, like it's your life, it's your choice. If that happens, and that's, I mean, like I said, I'm not your dad.
I can understand where he's coming from. I mean, sometimes you need to gear yourself up and have at least a symbol of defiance. Because we talk about a lot of other people are going on Earth and have these stockpiles. It's like, what are you afraid of? Your fears are ginned up by somebody else. Like, you live in a nice neighborhood, in an excerpt somewhere where, if you even stub your toe, like 20 police cars are going to show up and ask you nicely what happened, versus anywhere else with, if they show up, they might arrest you just because they have nothing else better to do, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference. So I understand where you're coming from. And I hope it never comes to the point that you will force have to use it. That's my best wish for you.
Yeah, I hope you never have to use it.
Yeah, I know they're going to shoot back, but I'm not going to a foreign country, so.
True, yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope you know what you're getting into, and like Raphael just said, I hope you never have to use it.
Yep.
Other than like for target practice or when you're learning, your safety course and learning how to. I hope you never have to use it for its intended purpose. Yeah.
I think Nick is actually next.
Nick is next, and then we'll hit the hands. So go for it, Nick.
Okay. So, Steve, I just I saw your video the other day about Andor.
Oh yeah,
something similar, and you mentioned how you don't give a shit about lore, and I just pictured all these angry, pedantic Star Wars fans going, "But you're supposed to care about it, Steve. You're supposed to be a pedantic little asshole. You're consuming media the wrong way. You never know if there's a right way and a wrong way to enjoy a movie or show, right?"
Yeah. It is. I mean, people. Yeah, it's like there. I mean, it's weird. Like there are so many different kinds of people who are like super Andor fans. Like there are people who do seem like they legitimately were into the story and cared about the characters and, enjoyed it the way I enjoy shows that I enjoy. And good for them. Like they saw something in the show that I didn't, and I'm glad they enjoyed it. And then there are the people who seem to just, they only respond to the anti-fascist stuff, which is one of my favorite parts of it, but wasn't enough to get me to say, I can't wait to watch this next episode. Like, but I really, really admire the fact that in this current environment, there's a Star Wars show that is just as blatantly anti-fascist as you can get. I thought that was fantastic. And so there are some people who when I say that I'm not really crazy about the show, they'll say, but how can you not like it? It's anti-fascist. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is. I like that about it. I wish it was more interesting to actually watch. And then there are people who it's just about the lore and, but you see how it's about, you finally get to see how the Rebel Alliance started, and you finally get to see the way the Empire went about, gathering the resources to build the Death Star, as if that's interesting, just for its own sake. And I'm sorry, I don't give a shit about any of that.
Steve, I will say, I do think it adds a bit of weight to see that it wasn't just about the sheer number of human bodies that had to be laid down for him to line up that shot. But then again, Rogue One already accomplished that. Didn't need a whole. So anyway, okay, that's not what I wanted to bring up.
Go for it.
So I want to share with you just a little bit of the batshit craziest Star Wars lore you'd ever want.
I would love to hear this. I would love to hear this. Okay.
There was a game created by BioWare called Knights of the Old Republic, and it picks up about 4,000 years before the movies. And it still has a Galactic Republic and a Jedi Order, and the rules are a little more flexible. It's like these things were still relatively new concepts at the time. But you go on this treasure hunt, you find these star maps, treasure maps, ruins, ancient technology, and that implies an even older society, like 25, 26. We're talking like 30,000 years before the movies now. And they basically explain how the galaxy became populated. It was like back in the day when everyone was still in their industrial stage or pre-industrial stage. You see the first species that unlocked hyperspace travel, and they conquered everybody else. They basically pulled a Europe. Yeah, so, and it wasn't like the hyperdrive technology that everybody else uses in the movies. This was powered by the Force, and of course, only the dark side, because this was basically a dark side species. I don't like the trope of, oh, everyone in this species is evil. But again, I think of these as like the Star Wars Europeans. Anyway, so this species, the Rakatans, think of them like hammerhead frog people, like this tall coneheads. And they just went about and they would enslave anyone they came across or eat them, because eating people is awesome, especially cannibals. And we're not talking about like a few individuals here and there who could use the Force. Pretty much every one of these people could use the Force. And they only drew from the dark side because, what, light side? What's that shit? No, the universe is darkness. That should be all you need. And
dark side gets much more stuff done.
So if they came to your world and you were
Oh, there's a wonderful line.
Okay, don't let it. Don't jump. Just a little comment every once in a while is fine.
I swear. Okay. So if they came to your world and you were lucky, you wouldn't be eaten or enslaved. You would be plugged into a torture coffin alongside a couple other 100 torture coffins, plugged into their hyperdrive, where they would use your Force sensitivity and your cries of pain to find the Force on like other planets. And if you were really lucky and you were like exceptionally powerful in the Force, they might let you out of the torture coffin, and you wouldn't quite become a Padawan or apprentice. You would be a Force hound. They would train you like a dog to go sniff out like other worlds and see if they were even worth conquering or eating. And if you were really, really lucky, they would brand you with these specific tattoos so that if you died in the field, they would know to eat you and absorb your power.
Well,
That was
half
the
of
most
these
like
people comic book fans or something, because it sounds very like the Court of Owls.
And it gets even crazier.
Talent. Court of Owls, the talents, the Electrum, and they put you into cold storage between using you. Jesus, well, half of these people comic fans.
I'm getting there. This is some of the craziest part. So, to give you an idea of just how powerful these people were, Tatooine in those days was the Everglades planet. It was just blue and green, just paradise everywhere, and its people had just started sending rockets into space. Again, barely anyone had even left their own solar system yet. But that caught the attention of the Rakata, who then bombed the planet's surface to glass, which over many ages crumbled into sand. And that's why the planet looks the way it does now. They killed it. And they enslaved the common ancestors of the Jawas and the Sand People. And the Sand People remember all of this. They have this custom in each tribe. They have this one person, the storyteller, who has to remember the history of their people exactly to the letter. They are not allowed to paraphrase it. Otherwise, it would become a game of telephone over the generations and evolve into a very different story. Yep. So they remember all this stuff happening to them, and they've rationalized it as their gods, allowing the aliens to destroy them as punishment for no longer living off the land, for developing technology. So that's why the Sand People hate technology, and they really hate people from other planets who use technology with their starships and their droids and their speeders and then their guns and like, hey, you stupid fuckers, you better learn, get smart, live off the land like us, so they'll get you too. They have the best reason. They don't say it that way though. They say like,
right. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm almost done. I swear. So you're probably wondering why these people don't still control the galaxy by the time of Palpatine's empire. I mean, the funny thing is, back then it was a much smaller galaxy. People hadn't migrated to as many planets yet, and I assume the Rakata missed a few. So as opposed to the many thousands or even millions of worlds that eventually made up Palpatine's empire, the Infinite Empire, as they called themselves, only ever conquered about 500 worlds. It was a small, less populated galaxy, and they ruled for about 10,000 years. It was like the bleakest time. So why aren't they still in power? Well, at some point, one of the many races they enslaved developed a virus that only targeted this species. But those that it didn't kill, it had a weird side effect. They lost their connection to the Force. Now, well, that's like the canon explanation, but some have taken it like a more philosophical way, like, well, maybe after they've abused the Force, abused the dark side for so long, the Force just cut them off, put them in timeout, maybe. Had enough of them. And I remember all of their technology, their ships, their droids, everything was Force-based. So suddenly all their stuff was useless. And their slaves very quickly rose up, basically overnight, and drove them back to their home planet, where they are now surrounded on all sides by their former slaves, ready to wipe them out. So they turn on a jamming field around their entire planet that would shut down ships and make them crash. So on the one hand, they were safe, that nobody could approach them anymore, but they were also trapped on their home world. They couldn't even fly their own ships. So they eventually regressed to like infighting and even nuclear war. And I don't mean like weird sci-fi space nukes. I mean normal nukes like we use. And after several generations, centuries even, trapped underground, waiting for the surface to be safe again, by the time the descendants came back out, they had completely forgotten their history. These people went from ruling the entire galaxy to regressing to like a hunter-gatherer society overnight. Isn't that crazy?
Not really, Belle.
I mean, but you know what?
It when I get my turn. It's not really crazy. But
Okay.
I'll explain it when I get my turn.
I mean, a video game tie-in is the perfect place for that kind of shit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like, if
and the
I
thing
was
is,
in charge of Star Wars and I had like my video game division, I'd be like, you know what? Go nuts. Do whatever you want.
The thing is, I love this kind of thing because it is a story. It's almost like a Greek tragedy about hubris and, rising and falling. And I do like that they tried to come up with a sort of origin story, like, oh, who was the first species to unlock hyperspace travel when everyone else was still using conventional Earth-like rockets? It had to start somewhere. Anyway,
Where did all that sand on Tatooine come from? I've always wondered.
The Everglades planet.
The Everglades planet. Well, yeah.
Sorry, go
No, go ahead.
a little bit of the Larry Niven's future history thing, where in his one, I'll be very brief. That the galaxy was conquered by a species that had psionic powers, telepathic powers, and they could control. They're actually called the I forget what they're called, but anyway, the thing is they grew lazy and they basically trained one of their subject species to like build ships for them and do all their stuff for them, and then of course that species one evolved resistance to the telepathic ability, and two turned their weapons on that species and were wiping them out, and then because they didn't want to lose the war, and they knew they were about to lose the war, they basically created a psionic weapon that killed all sentient life in the galaxy. So then everything that came after was like second generation sentient beings.
Yeah.
There was only like non-sentient things that were still alive.
It only takes a couple generations for this to forget what's history.
It sounds like the threat of like every season of a new Star Trek show. It's going to wipe out all sentient life in the galaxy. Like again, we're doing that again.
Yeah. Oh, that's sorry. Before I forget, let's say all these people. They even had a unique super weapon, and it wasn't another planet blower upper. It was called the Star Forge, and it was basically this evil metal womb, about a 1/12 the diameter of the Death Star. Everything was smaller back then. Yeah, smaller galaxy, smaller ships.
It was a more primitive time.
But basically, it drew power from a nearby star, kind of like in Episode 7, but much more slowly. And, material from like space debris. And it would, if you had it in the hands of a powerful Force user like Sith, and you just kept it parked somewhere that nobody could find it, you could pump out endless Star Destroyers and droids and whatever you need, and eventually overwhelmed the Galactic Republic just with this cheat code. I'm like, hey, that's unique. Because there was a time in the expanded universe where everybody wanted to have their own Death Star or their own super weapon. And they had some really stupid shit.
Leave the stall alone. Sorry.
But probably the funniest super weapon that I've ever heard of in Star Wars was the Darksaber. It is some mafia guy.
Saber.
He gathered his guys together, like, oh, what do you want to show us, boss? He's like, the Death Star plans. And like, boss, we can't build a Death Star. That was like a third of the galactic economy. We can't do it. I'm not saying I want a whole Death Star. I want the gun. Just the gun. And we'll slap a hyperdrive and a couple of boosters on it, and it will just put it in orbit and hold people hostage. It'll hold them at gunpoint, literally. And you know what it looks like when it fires. It's like a lightsaber, boy. That's the Darksaber to you. I love this stupid, corny shit. Star Wars should be a little goofy.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
The guy's nuts.
Okay.
He's completely nuts.
Okay. Is that everything, Nick?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
Just wanted info dump, basically.
Okay. Lessons learned. Your turn.
You know, talking about Andor, and you know what it reminds me of? I'm always going back to the early 2000s. I mean, that's my stick now. I don't know why, but it kind of gives me a bit of a West Wing vibes.
Mm.
And
I can see that.
People who can see it can see people who know, like, what Star Wars and the West Wing? What? Okay, here it is. It's, in a way, comfort food for people who are frustrated with the way things are. Because back then, it was, oh my God, look at all the dumb stuff that Bush is doing. If we only had a good president that understood how America was, and you had your quippy lines, and then that we could. And I watched the whole West Wing. It was well written, but as a Puerto Rican, I was like, do you not understand that you're still doing the imperialism?
Yes.
You know? Do you understand that? Yeah, the things that you think are good, like, I don't know, cutting Social Security, it's still not a good idea, but you're coaching it in a way that is a good idea, right? But it felt like comfort for them. In reality, we had Bush. In Fantasyland, we had Martin Sheen, being the best president ever, And now with Andor, it's like, we have this, whatever it is, we can fight against, in fiction, we can fight against the evils, right?
Yeah.
We're not really going to take arms against people because, that gets messy and people die. But in fiction, we can blow up ships and have the hero suffer and all that for us. And then, finally help defeat the evil, which is, I make fun of it, but I think we do need that inspiration too.
Well,
Right?
I
agree.
kind of what you kind of said in your video, Steve, that basically art's a reflection of our time.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's the most important part of Andor for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that, but I think also people like Steve have to also be critical. Like, this is a good idea, this is a good analogy, etc. But it has its limitations, and in the reality, you gotta if you have the courage. And I find myself without it most of the time. Sadly. You have to do the work, right? And it's gonna be messy. And I think that's tying a little bit of what I was saying earlier. This too shall pass, but it doesn't happen magically.
Yeah,
right? It doesn't happen by the rate of a writer like the writer of KOTOR or something like that. We decided that 10,000 years is enough for horrible human tragedy and an evil empire, right? It happens because people make it happen, and the artist is in a very important part of it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And as long as men die, liberty will never perish. Charlie Chaplin.
Hey, great speech.
He's an anarchist.
Better than any of the speeches in Andor. Although some of those Luthen, the big Luthen speech in season 1 is still my favorite part of the whole show, and that's one of. And I was like, why isn't the show about him?
I also saw a speech about how revolution isn't for the sane.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I like that speech, and I liked that it was Forrest Whitaker getting to just fucking go nuts. But I was like, this show is so long, and this speech accomplishes nothing other than letting us know that Saw is fucking nuts.
You know what's
and it's
funny,
nice,
Steve?
but yeah, go ahead.
That second season was originally going to be 4 seasons.
I know,
and they truncated it into 3 episode arcs.
It chills my blood. It chills my blood to think like they wanted to do 5 years of this, like at this pace. This is insane.
Just imagine every 3 episodes being 12 episodes.
I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, the 12 episodes that they had were too many. But I mean, I will say though, with season 2 of Andor, I thought after they got past that first story arc, where, half of it was just fucking Mon Mothma at her fucking daughter's wedding for 3 episodes. I thought once they got past that and things started to pick up a little and they started doing the time jumps, I felt like the pacing did get better. But I mean, damn, I was watching those first 3 episodes going, are we seriously? Is she just going to be at this wedding for all 3 of these episodes?
Yep.
And yes, absolutely, she was.
Well, the thing about it is you can have longer seasons, but you have to tell more stories. You have to mix in other elements, like Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5 both did very well. That you had your overall arching arc, but yet you had all these other stories within the overall arching story.
That was a thought that I had, and then I'll make this point, and we'll go on to Kara, who has her hand up. that was a thought that I had after Star Trek Discovery ended. I thought, I wish I had gotten more than 5 stories with these characters, because Discovery did the serialized season where like every season had a single extended story, and some of it was good, some of it was not good, but I felt almost like at the end of watching 5 seasons worth of TV, I got 5 stories with these characters. And I just was like, great, you get 10 stories in 1 season of Strange New Worlds. And maybe that's why I feel like I know those characters better, even though, we still have, we're just about to start season 3 of Strange New Worlds, and we've had all 5 seasons of Discovery. I feel like I have a better handle on almost every character in Strange New Worlds than I have on the characters in Discovery, because you don't get more time with them, but you get more stories with them. And it feels like you get more, because it's not, a single extended story for, 10 or 15 episodes. And yeah, it almost feels like, God, I feel like I was cheated. It's like, because I like a lot of the Discovery characters, but it's like you get 5 stories, you get 1 story a year, and I just, it doesn't work for me. But anyway, Cara, your hand's up. Go for it.
Right. 3 things. First thing, talking about gun violence in the UK. One of the worst we had was actually in a place called Dunblane. You probably heard about it.
Scotland.
And that was a guy who actually went out with a plan to kill everyone in sight. And he did, and then killed himself. So, and like Steve said, he's not your father, and Isaiah, I'm not your sister. But I'm still going to worry about you. And all I ask is that when you pick it up, you take lessons and you keep it safe. Yeah. That's all I can ask. Secondly, as for countries or civilizations suddenly dying very, very quickly, one of the worst catastrophes in the ancient world was that of the Nabateans, which is now where Petra is. And apparently the weather, the rains that used to come in every year, because they actually had pipes apparently into their reservoirs, didn't come, and they just stopped. In fact, at least according to my father, who was a meteorologist and studied this, and he said what happened was that the clouds were just stopped at the mountains, and the rain never got to them, and the people just left. And thirdly, because I'm a bit of a bastard, I've never watched Andor, and I can't get into it. But I will say this about Steve, and this is why I loathe Discovery, and I can probably get into a couple of episodes of Strange New Worlds. The one thing you do, and this is a Kurt Vonnegut saying, give your character obstacles, give them something to overcome, make them want something. And that will show what they are. So you start Strange New Worlds, and the captain meets, not as they're going to do this, and Captain Pike meets an old flame who is involved with smugglers. And we learn this in, say, the first 10 minutes. And suddenly Captain Pike knows that they're smuggling dilithium, which is what the Enterprise needs. But dilithium is a valuable resource, and they're mining it from the planet, and they're doing it under adverse conditions. So you suddenly have the obstacle of Captain Pike knowing he has to arrest this woman, but he doesn't want to because she's an ex-love or an ex-fuck or whatever it is,
right?
And that's what I mean. And that's where Strange New World gets it right, even though I don't much like it, and Discovery doesn't. Discovery doesn't put that many obstacles. It's all kind of made really easy for her, and really kind of, I'll just weep and look cute and sweet and wonderful, and eventually I'll become captain and everybody will love me. Whereas with Captain Pike, it's kind of, I really do have a dilemma here. They're mining dilithium from the planet. It's not going to the people. They're taking it and they're selling it on the black market, and it's going. That's basically it.
Well, and I'll piggyback on that last point. to just, I hate picking on Discovery because it's over and it is what it is. But I mean,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of it that I really liked. But to your point about having obstacles, and the obstacle needs to be concrete, and it needs to be something that the audience can understand. And so the last season of Discovery was about this, race between the good guys and the bad guys to possess the technology that the preservers used to seed life on the many planets throughout the galaxy. And so that was the MacGuffin, was to get that technology. But they never explained what the danger was or what the threat was. Because there was it's like a race against time, and the Federation has to get their hands on this technology before anybody else. Or what?
Like, okay, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or what? What's going to happen? Is it dangerous?
Yeah.
Is it like the Genesis device? Does it does it wipe out the life that's already there to create new life?
Yeah.
They never explained why we were supposed to be afraid of it. It was just, well, we need to get it before they do. And because they never filled that centerpiece in, there's not really a lot of urgency to it. There's not I hope the good guys win this fight. But why? What's going to happen?
Well, and
TNG did it better. When they did that one where they have to go after this thing that's where all life has come from.
Yeah, and they did it in one episode.
Yeah,
they did it in one episode, not 10.
With the hologram, he goes, well, if she wasn't dead, I'd kill her. We've travelled half across the galaxy just for her to say, you've all come from us and developed into a myriad of things. Oh, bloody marvellous. We've just
isn't that neat?
The thing I like
now you've discovered that you all came from us and we're the progenitors. I can understand Worf, and that's why, at the time I didn't understand it, but now I can understand Worf kind of, well, if she wasn't dead, I'd kill her.
Well,
Big Worf.
What gets me about that technology is that, there was no theory, we got to get it first. And no one thought, hey, well, maybe we should cooperate together with the other guys, because if it's a beneficial technology, maybe it'd be better for everybody, and maybe that'll lower tensions and all that.
Yeah.
The thing I love about that
Nick.
that original episode is, it gives us answers. It gives us an explanation for why humans and Klingons and all these other species are clearly just humans with shit glued to their foreheads.
Yeah.
It's because they all descend from the same species. Okay, but they did it in one episode, and it leaves us asking more questions. But it doesn't give us all the answers. It leaves it for us to piece the rest together ourselves, which I think a lot of the better Star Trek episodes do.
Yeah.
But then they thought, no, let's give more answers, but in an asinine way that just drives people crazy. Let's make them this big focus instead of just isn't that neat? That's the thing I like. Old Trek, things like that. It just be, isn't that neat? Moving on. Now it has to be this big apocalyptic thing.
Yeah, the characters assume will be a big apocalyptic thing, even though I don't think even they had a reason to think that it would. But anyway, go ahead, Sirius.
Well, with that episode, actually, just real quick, is that it also explained how Romulans and humans and Klingons and humans can crossbreed.
Yeah, right. Now, the one thing I did, I like, because going back to, my sort of general disinterest in lore for its own sake, I didn't need an episode to explain why all the aliens look the same, because I know the reason. It's because, like Nick said, they're just humans with shit glued to their face. Yeah. But so I didn't care about that, and I didn't feel like, oh, finally that's been explained. I don't care. I don't need that. But I liked that when they got to the end of that episode, there's that little beat where most of the other aliens don't care. Like Kara said, the Klingon guy is like, oh, whatever, and is pissed off that's the key to the puzzle, and the Cardassians are like, whatever, let's blow this pop stand. And so everybody leaves, and Picard is kind of deflated because he's like, oh, this didn't accomplish anything. And then at the end, he gets that call from the Romulan guy that just kind of teases a little bit. The Romulan guy kind of got it, and he wasn't ready to start peace negotiations or anything, but he recognized that there was a shared, heritage. Yeah. And that kind of, you got the impression it kind of meant something to him. And there's just a faint little light of hope that, well, maybe someday we'll all be able to find a way to get along. And so that kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of
like,
redeemed it
my
for me.
My father would have said it means we're all carbon-based creatures,
Mhm.
and we all descend from one progenitor. And I kind of remember I looked when we saw that episode, and I went, "Yes, but it still cheeses me off." And it's like,
Well, yeah, but the thing,
all that effort. Picard made himself an outlaw. He pretended to be, and then me kind of going off on one. And my dad goes, Cara,
right?
first it's fiction.
Yeah.
Secondly, it kind of explains things. I said, but it leaves more questions. He said, but that's the point. You can then go from all your questions and not find any real answers. But that's the point of writing. That's the point of
See,
discovering
just like I
things.
said.
Well, also
Okay,
too,
yeah.
again, it's also paralleling our world, right? It's also telling us, hey, 'cause
Yeah.
we know for a fact that we have common progenitors, but yet we still have our problems. But maybe someday we could get over it. So,
I mean,
and speaking of
exactly.
it, and that actually is a perfect
Yeah.
segue.
I'll
Yeah.
say-
Well, okay, serious. What? Yeah, you were about to
so-
go into what you had your hand up for. So
Yeah. So,
Go
I and many people in the Black community and some people in the white community have been celebrating the destruction through fire of the Nottoway Plantation.
yes.
And it's been
Oh, yes.
interesting reading the comments. Like, I've not seen. I saw one black person who was lamenting it, and I was just like, "Dude, bro, what's wrong with you?" But and there was many white people that were also celebrating.
Mhm.
But the only people who were upset about it were all white people, mostly in the South. And
Mhm.
and it was this whole thing about and everything from, oh, well, this was history. And like, well, no, this place was a distortion of history because for anyone who doesn't know, it was a resort where you could have your wedding or other functions. And the museum section was literally in one room. And I saw a video of a woman that was like one of the not a caretaker, but like a tour guide.
Mhm.
And basically, she was trying to minimize and whitewash how bad slavery was.
Yeah.
And the thing that stuck out the most to me about the things she was saying that was trying to make slavery sound nicer, or at least sound this particular slave owner nicer. Well, there's two things. One was that, well, he had so many slaves, and the reason why is that he bought whole families so they wouldn't be split up. Like, oh, well, how beneficent of you.
What a guy.
What a guy. And then
Oh my goodness.
and then the second part, the thing that stuck out the most to me was he allowed them to hunt and fish so they could support themselves. I'm like, no, he didn't want to pay to fucking feed them.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
And he forced them
Exactly.
to forage for them fucking selves.
Yes.
Because he didn't want to spend any money on, so he wanted all the free labor. He didn't even want to spend money to fucking feed them. So they had to feed themselves. And she was painting this as a positive thing. So what I started doing in all the comment sections, I've been referring to this place as racist fantasy camp.
Yes.
Where
Totally.
white people can go and dress up as Southern belles and masters and pretend that they lived in this halcyon time, sipping mint juleps on the veranda. And I'm like, deep down, what this place was about. And the people who did that were sitting back, and they were wealthy because this particular guy owned 155 people who also built the building, by the way, because I saw one.
But we're lazy. We don't contribute. We're lazy.
Exactly.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
That-
this
that-
one
that's
woman in this poetry group. That I'm seeing
the car.
Let him finish the story. Let him finish the story.
So it was basically saying that he built this building. No, the 155 people that he owned built the fucking building.
Yeah.
And so there were some people, and so it was like, oh, but the architecture. I'm like, fuck the architecture. So I'm like, it's not like you can't build. There's not other buildings like that. And I said, look, don't worry, racist white people. There are tons of other racist fantasy camps in the South. Paula Deen famously
I
had
also like to
a
point out
wedding
that
there,
the
and she
women
caught shit for it.
back then couldn't
Yeah.
vote. So
What's that?
no, I was saying that everyone likes to romanticize that time, but I gotta admit that the women who want to dress up in those gowns couldn't vote. So
Yeah. Well,
Right.
The burning-
Ironically, they don't think about that because again, they want to romanticize it. It was this great
Yeah.
time.
The
And
worst I heard, and this is why I'm thinking of leaving this poetry group, although it'll cut the number down to about 2, was this one girl who says, but, and I'm talking about sort of slavery and what it was like, and I was talking about a really famous one. You've probably heard him. I think it could be Frederick Douglass, but I'm not sure. because my
Wait.
knowledge of that.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Yeah. I think he lost. He was a slave.
He had
Yes,
been
he was.
slaves.
Yeah.
His
Mhm.
mother
Yes.
was sold, I think, when he was 4 years old. So no, families weren't always kept together. Thank you very
Mhm.
much.
Yeah.
And she said, and I get this, and I don't know how I didn't tell her to her face that she was an ignorant bitch and should be taken out and summarily slapped. She said, but the slaves enjoyed being enslaved.
How do
Well,
you
sure. Who wouldn't?
A little bit more than being dead.
See, actually,
I sat there and I
don't
know
think
this
I would
girl
enjoy
has. I
being-
know this girl has cystic fibrosis. I know you're not supposed to insult disabled people, but quite frankly,
What
if
a
I
great way
said
to start.
something that was totally inappropriate, I would hope that Steve would turn around and say, "Cara, that's inappropriate. I'm muting you now for the rest of the chat,
Yes.
well, so the thing
whether
about
I'm
it is,
disabled or not." You
Well,
do
Yes.
not.
Yeah. Of course.
well, that's the thing. Well, also too, you wouldn't be insulting her about her disability. You'd be insulting her
Right.
because she was a stupid moron.
Mhm.
Right.
Something ridiculous.
That's still allowed. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and the thing is, that what some people say, I challenged one guy because he was like, "Well, I bet most of you, your family wasn't there." I'm like, "No, you're right. My family wasn't there. My family was enslaved on a plantation in eastern Alabama, and also another part of the family in western Georgia. And I happen to know many of their names. I've got pictures of a couple, and the last formerly enslaved ancestor lived to 1953." And I have living relatives who knew him. So there's living people now who knew formerly enslaved people. That's how recent it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's 160 years ago, long time, but not that long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
is
I
there,
know when
like-
Go ahead.
It's like your grandma's grandma or something like that. It's only like 2 or 3 generations
Yeah,
behind.
it's a lot more recent than most people realize. And I mean, when I saw the story about that plantation burning down, I think I posted about it on Facebook. I said, I mean, I can't really be that upset about it because I think they all should have been burned down in 1865.
I'm gonna be honest.
Like,
I'm gonna be honest.
Someone caught one of the ones Sherman missed.
yeah, exactly. Hey, it got another 150 years after it should have been burned down. So you know what?
Saya, I think, wanted to talk to.
I'm gonna be.
Yeah,
I'm
go
gonna be honest. I love history, but then again, it's like there was probably like rapes in this house. There was
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely.
house.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's like whatever tortured souls were in there, like may have like finally lit the match, and it was time to fumigate the property. Let everyone.
And the thing is, if this was actually a museum and they talked in realistic terms, honest terms about the slavery, I would lament the loss of the building too. But this was a total distortion. This is part of the lost cause narrative, trying to pump the whole thing. And again, listening to the words of the people who were defending, or upset about this, and I'm like, no, you are the reason why I'm glad that this thing is burned down. Especially some of them, like it wasn't. We already know it was electrical fire, but some of the comments were implying, or sometimes more than implying, that somehow black people like committed arson and burnt the shit down. And you're like, well, this and that. Who the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like the electrical fairies. I mean, I mean, it would be poetic justice if a crowd of black people with torches went and burned the fucker down. But that's not actually what happened. But you're so racist that you assume that that's what happened.
Well, that's telling on themselves, isn't it? Because it's like, what would I do if there was a house that celebrated white slavery? I think I would burn it down.
Bingo.
Oh, but not to me. You don't do that to my heritage, right?
Yeah.
And as far as the generations, in my case, so the youngest surviving enslaved person was my great grandfather George, and he was only a couple years old when the war ended. But so my father's grandfather, not my grandfather's grandfather, my father's grandfather, and he lived until the 50s or 60s too. Like he died before I was born, but not by a lot. For me, I think neither one of them really. I was born in '68, so think that I was almost born in time to be alive at the time my last enslaved ancestor.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me. I mean,
just 92, and I was the last. I was born in '92, and I was the first person in my family to have all rights under the Constitution, and that was 33 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's you can find it on YouTube. There was I think it was one of the game shows from the 50s, like What's My Line or something, where the guest, the mystery guest who the panelists had to guess who he was a man who as a child had witnessed the Lincoln assassination.
Wow.
Like, and he was like in his 90s, but you know, he was a boy in Ford's Theater when Lincoln was shot, and now here he was in like the 50s, the 1950s on TV. Like it's incredible to think
all the shit that he experienced, like airplanes and
yeah.
He missed. How long did he live? Because did he get to see Sputnik?
I don't know, but I mean, just like that's how recent it was.
Yeah.
You know,
Christopher Lee saw the last guillotine execution.
And to Isaiah's point, as far as rights, the Fair Housing Act was passed in my lifetime. When I was born, the Fair Housing Act had not been passed, so you could still discriminate against Black people in housing when I was born. That's how recent it was.
Like I think South Carolina didn't get rid of their
miscegenation.
Miscegenation, yeah.
They didn't get rid of those till like the year 2000. Like
oh yeah, there was a period, I think for some reason it happened like in the early and mid 2000s, like because all of the laws were null and void anyway because they had been superseded by federal law or overturned by the courts, but they were still technically on the books. And there were like all of these states that like finally officially like repealed all their Jim Crow laws or repealed all of, you know.
Just fucked one, and he was like, "Oh, okay, I guess we'll let."
Well, okay, what the hell. Anyway, okay,
and that's cultural appropriation. You're a segregationist, but you have a Black daughter.
Yeah, come on, man.
We're not good for anything, but you'll fuck one of us. And I'd love to meet Nikki Haley in person because when she talked about, I tried to say the United States was not a racist country. I'm like, your name is Nimarata, but you go by Nikki because you're in a racist fucking party.
Exactly. Why'd you change your name to Nikki?
Same thing with Bobby Jindal. He's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, my hands up. So, like, I'm
go for it.
In terms of it, there's so many things I want to comment on. My only wish when I did share on social media that plantation burning down, all I was able to say in text was like, "And nothing of value is lost." I wish I could include the gift from the critic, and that will and this will have been perfect. But like, so many people love Gone to the Wind because of that sort of thing too. Anyway, finally, one other thing, 255 AD, back when we're talking about like Klingons and like humans and stuff like that. 255 AD said, I read a sci-fi story once where someone asked, "Why are there so many humanoid aliens?" and another character just said, "There's so much alcohol in the galaxy, someone has to drink it."
That perfect explanation.
Okay.
Perfect explanation.
Yes. Now, finally to my thing. May is like, no. I'm not doing that because, like, I already did it before. We know that May is like Asian American Pacific Islanders Heritage Month as well too, and we know what June is. Pride is canceled. It's wrath. Blah. That's not what I have my hand up for. Give Phoenix money. Like I mentioned on the Ask Away, they were denied with SSI again. So again, in order to like pay for a bunch of things as well too, like they're the only way they can like survive and like have a roof over their head and bills paid for and something like that. If like someone gives them money as well too, and also Joanna Roberts, like. It's going to be the end of the month, so like she for sure will need some money at some point or another for like food or something like that. I just got paid, so I will be able to like give her money and something like that. So it's like if you can't afford to do so or not comfortable, not in a financially comfortable space to do so, it's fine. But like still, if you can help out, please do. Joy Fire Lane there also has been like struggling. Oh man, again, I got so many friends that are struggling to like pay bills and like make ends meet and something like that. I wish that we can do something about that. Like for now. In the immediate term, you can give money to them, and whenever you can, there's various amounts of links as well too. They're all ensured at links top page as well too. Oh, and Nelson Echo and like Lennon Quinn, they still have not gotten their payment, the missing SSI payment for this month. It was fixed apparently, and like the office says like you're gonna get on the 16th, and they still haven't gotten it yet as well too. So it's like. Yeah, they can always use the money as well too. So like there you go. Like only if you have extra money as well too. And if you can't help but like do share around those links to like the social medias and want that, or if you want the quick, easy, like just one place that you can share all these things and not like several links like I just posted now. There's also of course just like charitylinks.page. And yeah, I think I'm done. Now Joe McClory.
Yes.
Oh
Joe.
my goodness, so much has happened since my original point. One of the one of the things that we came across actually fairly late was the Plantation,
Yeah.
and a thing that I saw that was really good is the only Confederate monuments I accept are the burnt out ruins of plantation houses. That was so good.
I can stand behind that.
The where I was originally is talking about lore and
Yeah.
lore for lore's sake isn't good, and even what do you call it? Like even when you're going back into like prequels kind of stuff, like it can be good, and the parts of Andor that I really do like is giving the context of the Empire not only as an evil force but like a relatable evil force.
Yes.
And the parts that were slow, especially in the first season, that I actually really enjoyed and am kind of glad that they kept it that long, was just the piling on of the little indignities that that categorize the treatment of people under an authoritarian reign, that I enjoyed that it, like, in a real way, it kind of had you feel just waiting around for nothing to happen for the next bureaucrat who's just trying to keep the system going to rubber stamp you continue to be treated badly. Like I love that as a context to a force that Luke's aunt and uncle are able to like put up with, but also it's understandable that Luke and the other kids at the time are like, no, we really should, but also that it takes it getting personal for him to actually want to join the rebellion. Like the idea of this, like it makes almost the context it adds to it is very good. And meanwhile, like when you hear these people talk about the lore stuff, it's like in the Acolyte, the character that has been dead from a playing card, it's like, yeah, but that doesn't change anything that matters.
What I think Andor shows is
like
that
there's no story that impacts.
Yeah.
What I think Andor shows is that unfortunately most people will tolerate living under fascism as long as they and their own family can still eat. And for the first 10 or so years of Imperial rule, it was stable like that. But that's why, that raid in the first season that prompted the Empire to crack down, which was Luthien's plan, accelerationism, make life hell for everybody, like so that we could end this faster. I think that's kind of the interesting part where the Empire did get like increasingly ever more egregious, and it just didn't work. And that's why I do like that scene where Partagast is listening to that speech and he realizes, oh, we're basically fighting the entire galaxy. And I want the people in power in real life to realize that there are more of us than there are more of them, and that they can't kill us all.
Well, and this makes me actually want to watch it because I haven't seen it yet. And so in spite of the fact that somebody called me pathetic for not having seen it because apparently not having the time to watch every single show on TV. Yeah, seriously,
That's ridiculous.
Because there was a picture of, it was a B5 group actually, but they actually were taking somebody who plays a character on Andor and they were putting him in, like saying, well, maybe he should be Sheridan or Sinclair or Garibaldi or whatever.
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't recognize the actor because he's not been in anything that I've actually watched. And the guy's, well, that's actually pathetic. I'm like, and he called me a shut-in, and I'm like, you know who has time to watch every TV? Yeah, I know. You know who has time to watch every TV show that comes down the pike? Shut-ins.
I'm shut in because I haven't watched this science
Oh my
fiction
goodness.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's two points about lore that I wanted to make based off of what Joe said. I will give Andor this credit as well. Almost none of it feels like there's very little, if any, and that's where that came from in Andor. Like all of the stuff that Andor brings in, to the lore, it's part of the story that it's telling. It's and which is kind of impressive when you think that like the whole series takes place in the context of the construction of the Death Star and the gathering of the rebellion. Like there's all of this opportunity, if they wanted to do that kind of like filling in the gaps stuff that I hate, and they did almost none of that. They have
your name is Solo.
Yeah, exactly. There's almost none of that.
goodness.
There's a whole bunch of action in season 2 on this planet Gorman that is not there to fill in any gaps in the lore, is not there to explain where something came from. It's telling the story they're telling, and it's illustrating, one of the things, like one of the tactics that the Empire does, the way the Empire uses misinformation, the way the Empire intentionally allows the rebellion to kind of spark, to give them an excuse to then crack down really hard on people. It's telling its own story, and it's not doing any kind of lore mending at all, which, as someone who hates that, I really appreciated.
My favorite.
Just a real quick question, because this will be the decider of whether or not I do watch it or not.
Okay.
Do the Imperials do they shout a lot or scream a lot?
Not really.
Good.
And actually, almost all of the Imperial characters who like have significant roles are bureaucrats. Like there's very few like military characters in it.
Okay, the reason why I ask is because one of the things I probably hated the most about the First Order is that they're not scary, and the reason why they're not scary is because they're a bunch of screaming maniacs. Because of some
They're
reason,
neo-Nazis.
The two filmmakers who made those films seem to think that that's how they told you somebody was evil, that they were a screaming maniac. And if you look back at the Imperials in the original trilogy, what made him scary as fuck is Tarkin could say, "Hey, destroy that planet of 4 billion people as smoothly and as casually as ordering a cup of coffee." That's the motherfucker who you have to be afraid of, because he will kill, and he has no compunction, no remorse, not even a thought that he's actually doing something heinous.
That's what made Peter Cushing so good in that role.
Right.
Just where he said, "Well, we're here, so destroy it," and it's Leia's kind of.
He just says, "Fire when ready." Like no big deal.
You gotta keep in mind.
And she says, "But I've told you where they are." And he goes, "Yes, but we're here, so you might as well destroy it, and that'll show you." And
that
that's
motherfucker's scary.
the really shocking.
I don't know. In the context of neo-Nazis, the idea of just people with power that just need so badly because they're so immature to prove how strong they are and are screaming about it.
That's what I'm trying to say.
That
The First
feels
Order
correct.
That's what I'm trying to say. The First Order is 4chan. That's the villain of the sequel trilogy. Is 4chan.
There you go.
You have to understand, to some people, that is the scariest thing. Anyway, I just wanted to say my favorite. I'm just about done. My favorite episode of Andor. Sorry, my favorite stretch of Andor was the prison break, but my favorite moment was probably the season 1 cliffhanger where you see what those panels were being used for to build the Death Star dish. Not because, it shows where this thing came from, but it shows that even Andor in prison helped build the thing that would eventually kill him. And it just makes you think of that cartoon. It's like, I don't like these things about society, and yet you participate in society. I am very intelligent. It's just a great visual metaphor for how, when we're all living in an empire, we don't get to opt out. Everything we do, every penny we spend goes towards the machine, or the Death Star in this case.
Yeah. Oh, now you want to destroy the Death Star you helped to build, Mr. Hypocrite.
Yes, please.
Yeah. One more thing about lore, and then we have two people's hands up. I'll get to them, and then we're ending the show. The show. But I have no problem with lore if it is just the accumulation of stories, right? Because like that's the thing. Like most of the Star Wars or Star Trek or superhero lore that like modern day nerds get obsessed with, it's not like the writers back in the 70s were just like, let's make up a bunch of lore. Let's do a bunch of world building. Like they were telling stories, and then other people told stories that followed on those that were in the same world. And eventually, after many years, you've got a whole bunch of stuff that happened in this fictional world, and that's what people call lore. And to me, there's a difference between that and like sitting down and going, let's world build. Right. Like, and let's make up a bunch of shit for its own sake. And then maybe we'll get around to telling a story at some point in the midst of this. Like, that's what I have a problem with. And that's why that's one of the things about Andor, despite my problems with it dramatically, that I really appreciated, is that it felt like they were saying, okay, this is the context, this is the world, these are the events that are kind of taking place before and after this. Now, what's our story? And, and it's their characters and it's their locations, and, no famous Star Wars people show up, like Luke Skywalker doesn't show up and go, hi, like there's none of that. Darth Vader's not in it. I think Darth Vader isn't even mentioned in it. Which is just wonderful. Like of all the problems I have with it, just the fact like, oh, there's no Darth Vader, there's no Emperor. They refer indirectly to the Emperor sometimes. I don't think they mention the Emperor's name until like the second season. Like it's all very removed from sort of the main action of Star Wars, which again, I consider a blessing, because like if I want to watch Star Wars, I'll watch Star Wars, like I've got it right there. Anyway, Isaiah, your hand's been up.
Yes. So real
Go for
quick,
it.
remember a couple months, maybe it was a month ago, I showed you guys my starship USS Star class.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so I've been I guess you could say brainstorming. I've been writing like a fictional, some like fictional entries into like a composition book I had, and I was actually thinking about a radical new like Star Trek series where they were basically the crew of the ship just they go to actual like astronomical objects like the Orion Nebula, and they basically go there and they just it's an explorer ship. They are literally going there to explore. It's not really a lot of first contact stuff. There's no Klingons or anything like that. It's them going to an actual astronomical object, so in this case the Orion Nebula, and they're doing an extensive survey of the area. They're cataloging planets. I was thinking of radical new like set designs. So like like the consoles look like unlike in the movies where they were like almost all L cars. In mine, they're L cars, but they have like a lot of like analog controls, like from the Apollo cockpits and this like from vintage like airplanes and spaceships. So there's that. The view screen functions more or less like a heads-up display. Like when they're at a planet, like there could be like little like LED indicators, like like describing everything and whatnot. We still have the Wrath of Khan uniforms, so this is like during the Lost era. But yeah, it's basically and really what the show really is going to be about is mostly kind of like the crew, like how the crew works on board a ship. It's gonna be like kind of like West Wing, but with a Star Trek premise. Like these crews, like yes, there's the comms officer, but maybe there's like I don't know. I don't know if it'll work.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking when you were describing it. My first thought was, what's the story? Like, how would that be interesting to watch? But then you got there on your own. Like, the scientific mission that they're on is the explanation for what the ship is and where they're going. Yeah. But the drama comes from the characters.
Right.
Like where
For example, so let's say that the Ishtar visits a planet with silicon-based life forms, and they send a probe to communicate with them, but the humans can never understand the language. It's still a first contact mission. Is even if we can't understand what they were saying, the ship made contact with these life forms, and the plot is for the crew or for the comms officer and her staff to develop formulas on how to communicate with these people, and eventually they may not even find the right one, but the effort was the plot, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
I know. I think something like that could work. I mean, I feel like it would be. I mean, it would definitely be different.
It needs
It
to
would
be
be. It would.
fleshed out a lot,
It would
but
be a very different kind of Star Trek show, which
Yeah.
I mean, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Um, yeah, I think it's a good idea. But yeah, the drama would have to come from. I mean, yeah, you could derive a certain amount of drama like from the missions, depending on what the mission was.
right. Well,
And yeah,
it's like so unlike where they go to like different planets and things like that, this is purely this ship is purely going to different nebulas and cataloging them. So the next one we'll go to is probably the Ring Nebula. And study basically how a white, all of that. It's a science ship. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
Its goal is specifically to go out and explore unknown space. That's what this crew is doing. It's not really first contact with Klingons. There's not really a lot of philosophical stuff, even though we can work that stuff in there. But that's kind of like a because I was always like curious in the actual Star Trek shows why they never really went to actual astronomical places that actually exist. And
yeah.
I
Mm.
Well,
I kind
because
of
it doesn't suit the kind
Yeah,
of show
'cause it's
Star
an
Trek
adventure
is. I
show,
mean,
not a science
yeah,
show.
yeah. But yeah, but there's nothing. I mean, if you could figure out your way into it, there's no reason why you couldn't have them
Oh
go
yeah,
to
I
the Orion Nebula or whatever. Yeah, Nebula.
because it definitely could be boring, but it's a but like maybe we can make it like an off kind of like The Office, but not necessarily The Office.
Now,
Like
if you would, now,
Uh.
if you made it a comedy, then I think it's even easier because then the boredom of the scientific mission would work with the premise. But if you could do it dramatically as well and
yeah,
take it seriously, it
it's
would
gonna
just
have to have
yeah
like some elements of comedy, some elements of just these are just crew members who are just they've been in space for this long, so everyone's
yeah.
guard is kind of down. Like for example, the captain could be the captain, but maybe like in like for leisure time in the holodeck, she can like be like a fashion judge, and she the crew member
Yeah.
like the crew's I don't know.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, maybe watch that though, because you'll get into Janeway doing her hollow novel territory. Where I'm
Oh my
like, are we like,
goodness.
okay,
I
we're
would,
spending a
I
lot of
would,
time on Janeway's hollow novel now. I don't,
yeah,
you can't expect me to care about this. We're spending way too
yeah,
much time on this.
yeah.
Um,
Caitlin
I'm
and
with Steve.
oh,
You
no,
can't really.
okay.
I think they overused the holodeck in Void.
oh, well,
And,
well, I don't, yeah,
and when they
I
had
don't think they should have
Janeway in
used
the
it at
turn,
all.
and most people who read The Turn of the Screw, when she's in that novel, The Turn of the Screw, I
Yeah.
remember thinking, she does know how it ends, doesn't she? It's not a happy ending.
I just remember
This is a really kind of gruesome ending for a story. So
Yeah.
does she not know how this ends? Is she going to try
Well,
and change
obviously
the
not.
ending?
She's playing the program.
I just
Uh,
Isaiah, what do you
I
go
just
for it?
remember in Voyager, they had that World War II episode, and I was just curious, was that in like 1998? Because everyone was on their Saving Private Ryan binge.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
Oh God.
There
could be.
was like a mini boom of World War II movies in the late 90s, and I think that would have been around the time that episode was produced. Yeah.
Mhm.
Band of Brothers, that
Yeah.
Yeah, Thin Red Line.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Caitlin
Okay.
has a good idea. Like you
Yeah.
can also like make it like a magic school bus for kids in universe as well too. If you want to lean into
Ooh.
the educational
Yeah.
and real science like side.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
was thinking about
that's
that,
what
like
I'm-
using the holodeck like a Zoom office, and then like the other end of the holodeck Zoom call is a class at Starfleet Academy that the
You know what that
cast
reminds
members
me
are
of?
teaching
You know
at.
what? You know what that
Yeah.
reminds me of, Joe? That reminds me of that episode on Enterprise when Archer. Remember that episode where Archer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the poop guy.
Yeah, they're answering questions from the elementary school kids. Yeah.
Now, as a custodian, I did take a little bit of an offense to Tripp's reaction to that because, I mean, yes, you're not the sanitation, but you know, I'm sure waste management still goes into environmental sciences, well, environmental systems, which is part of engineering.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, astronauts have to clean toilets and like.
But it just goes to show it's Enterprise. It's early. They haven't evolved, to the sophisticated, like enlightened humans of the TNG era yet. Like Captain Picard would be like, "Oh yes, of course. There are many fascinating things about our sanitation system." Like he wouldn't care.
Yeah,
But
I'm currently working on multiple water and wastewater projects. One of which is for the military. So yeah, that's absolutely part of engineering.
yeah.
Okay,
Kara, and then we're done. So go for it, Kara.
So I get to finish it off on a.
You get to end it. Yeah.
done. Yeah. Okay. Well, so talking about racism, and some of you know this who've been in the chat before, and I seem to encounter people like I've got a barcode across my head that says, "Come talk to me, dump all your racist shit on me." Like when I was at uni, and I think I told you about this guy Ahmed who was doing Islamic studies.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a theology degree, and you could do modules in Islamic studies and Chinese studies and everything else. And he was doing Islamic studies. Now, like I said, this guy who eventually gets himself sent down. I didn't realize you could be thrown out of university, but he managed it. And he's the one who came charging in. I think I told you and said, "Why don't you go back to where you came from?"
Yeah.
And Ahmed kind of looked at him and went, "What, Bristol?" And he kind of looked at him, muttered something unintelligible, which was probably like kind of and ran off. And I turned to him and said, "I think he meant," and I meant, "I know exactly where he meant."
Yeah.
Yeah, but apparently his grandparents came from Bristol, and they had a not sort of clothing store, but they sold material that you could make into shirts and everything. Textiles, yeah. So they had a big textile warehouse in Lampeter, which is kind of a ghost town now since they closed the university. Girls, I can't believe they moved everything to Trinity Carmarthen, because I did my master's there, and Trinity Carmarthen is a real shit university. It was horrible there. Bad teachers, bad course, bad organization. Just everything was so disorganized. And in the end, I think I deferred. I felt in the end that I bought my master's. I feel like I could have spent 600 quid, printed out a certificate from the net, and it would have been a better investment.
But anyway.
Apart from that, I remember there was an American Who Do You Think You Are? And Ben Affleck, I think, asked to be removed when he found out that his
oh yes, that's right. He found out he had like a slave-owning ancestor. Yeah, he was embarrassed
and he was
about
really,
it.
really upset about it.
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing the John Oliver thing about the Confederacy, and although people say, "Oh no, he's not like that," in actual fact, a couple of the Confederate generals said, and I think one of the more famous ones whose names I can't remember, he said, "Look, the best monument to the Confederacy is not a statue, is to actually make peace and to actually realize the wrong we've done and to try and make recompense." Yeah. He was one of the more sensible ones who said, "Look,
actually,
you can't."
General Lee actually was against statues.
Yeah, it could have been him. He said all these statues. I mean, one of the ones I was like, oh God, it's the one film, the one Glory was about. And I can't remember his name.
the 54th Massachusetts. Yeah.
Well, in actual fact, when they were all killed, and the surgeon of the surviving force actually wrote a letter to the colonel, and he said, and the colonel, get this, wrote back and said, had he been in charge of a white brigade, I'd have sent his body back. But no, I threw him into the grave with his Negro soldiers. I threw him naked into a grave with Negro soldiers. Unfortunately, it really backfired on him, because his family then went back and said, it's all right. He couldn't have a better honor guard, and he couldn't have a better you
And
know,
when I
yeah.
saw that scene in the movie, like I can't help but wondering, like, you're actually proving the point that we're all human after all.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
trying to like be like, oh, here you are, the black people, loser. It's like
Exactly.
Oh,
prove
Yeah,
that.
'cause,
oh,
Oh,
oh.
puppy.
there's a doggy.
Yeah,
Who's the sweetie?
Ah.
Aw.
Look at the
Yeah, but yeah, the Colonel Shaw and his family were abolitionists, so
Yes.
he wouldn't have had any objection. You would think he wouldn't have had any objection to
No.
being buried with his troops.
His father
yeah.
certainly didn't.
Yeah.
Because the surgeon wrote to him and said, I'm really sorry, I tried to get his body back, but the colonel refused to release it and said he'd just thrown it into a mass grave with his
Yeah.
he said his Negro soldiers,
Mhm.
and basically his father back said
Obviously,
it's all right. He couldn't have had a better honor guard.
Yeah.
But I love when racism blows up in racist faces.
Oh yeah.
And the same thing, like anytime someone, now if somebody, uses like a homophobic slur or a transphobic slur on me, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
you can do that all you want.
I remember when my first year at uni, and I did a BA, which is a 3 years, I got really, really ill. I mean, double pneumonia, and this friend of mine, who he and his boyfriend Damien are now married, and I was absolutely, and they got me, they brought me, and I'm almost fainting at the table. Said, look, I think we better get you to bed. And I'm thinking, they'll walk me back home, and no, they didn't. They put me to bed in their spare room. And I remember, and somehow they got the doctor out. I don't know how they managed it. I think they may have gone in and threatened him. Although they're pretty good then. And then the doctor said, "We'll get antibiotics for you." And then there's me kind of, how am I going to pay for this? Because they were about £7.50, and they're about £10 now for antibiotics. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay for this? And they called my mum. And my mum came round, chatted to these two men, and she leaves the house because they had a house at the time, and Mum swears, she said, this woman crabbed her way up to her, and she kind of said, your daughter's staying in this house with these two men. My mum said, yes. She said, well, what if them pounces on her? And my mum looked at this woman, Denise, I think, she said, these two men are sharing a bed. They are a couple. I don't think they have any desire to pounce on my daughter. They're not attracted to somebody of the opposite gender. If they hug her, it's not this kind of, I'm going to now have sex with you. It's a kind of, I hug you because you're a fellow student. And
Right.
I remember that this girl kind of looked and went, but she's staying in the house. And my mum said, yes. And where were you guys when she was obviously suffering? And this woman kind of, but they're gay. And my mum kind of just gave her this skate. My mum could kind of take you down to the size of a pinhead, this look that only a mother can give you that takes you down from being full of yourself to. And your point is? I think my mum said, and your point is? I said, but they're gay. And
Right,
my mum
the
said,
safest,
and
with the
again,
safest men
your
that you could
point-
find.
Yeah. And my mum said, and again, your point is?
Right.
And the
Like-
teachers didn't have to, but I do remember I got a lot of people sort of coming up to me afterwards when I recovered and I left, and people sort of said things to me like, but what did they do? She said, well, they fed me and brought me antibiotics and helped me into the bathroom when I was well enough to kind of have a bath and a shower, and then they kind of got me back to bed and chatted to me, and they brought and they looked after me. But what did they do? You get the feeling we're not talking on the same wavelength.
It's one of those things where, like, the when somebody throws out an insult that's like homophobic or racist or whatever, like the only insulting thing is that they think I would have been insulted by it. It's like, because you have to feel the same way to find it insulting. Like if somebody calls you gay as an insult, that's only insulting if you think there's something wrong with it. So the insult is, you thought that would hurt my feelings, saying I was gay. Like you thought, oh shit, no, don't, like I don't.
Oh
say
my
whatever you want,
God! I'll just
care.
clutch my pearls and go.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Like
okay.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I don't. It's no insult to me. I don't
The
care.
the only thing that bothers me is that you think that I am also a bigot and would be
Exactly.
offended by that.
Exactly. It's like,
I
oh,
think
you're,
the major problem is, and has always been, as both Martin and David, and we used to chat about this, that the problem is that for some reason they think if you're homosexual, you're a paedophile. It doesn't work like
oh,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
let's say
A lot of
I don't know, let's
Catholic
say I'm
government.
attracted to Nick,
Mhm.
and I think he's a cute guy, and I think he's really sweet, and Nick and I get it on, and we go out for a couple of dates, but that's about it. I don't pounce on him; he doesn't pounce on me.
Mhm.
And two
Unless he
men
wanted.
who fancy one another go out for dates, and they might have a couple of meals, and they might get on and get, go on further dates and get more involved, or they might not. They don't pounce on
Yeah.
12 and 13-year-olds. It's the same relationship as heterosexuals have.
Exactly.
could
It's
get
not
it
that
into their
different.
head-
Yeah.
No,
It's
they
the
get
same
it
as
just
any
the
other
same-
relationship or any other
It's
attraction.
just the same gender. But my
Yeah.
God, did I get a lot of grief for about 18 months, for about 8 months after that. Oh, what did
Jesus.
they do? Well, what do you think they did?
Like,
Well, they
yeah.
they
You,
romanticized
exactly.
it. Yeah, they
You
fed me,
tell the
they looked
story.
up-
What do you think happened?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
ending the show. The show is over.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, please take note of all of the links that Geek shared in the chat earlier, and also
Yeah.
charitylinks.page to help out our friends who need a helping hand. Don't forget patreon.com/Steve Shives, or click the join button on the YouTube page to become a supporter of my channel if you are not already. And we do this every month, last Sunday of the month. So if this
Yeah.
looks like fun, it is open to everybody who is a patron or a member, as long as there's room.
Oh,
I
that's
do
nice.
cut off access after there are a bunch of us in here.
Yeah.
Geek, thanks for throwing that into the private chat. Yeah, June 29th will be the next one that
I
we
just
do.
have
So
one thing, Steve.
Go
I
ahead.
know we're doing Hercule Poirot's Christmas, and we normally do it in 2 chunks.
yes.
Are we doing it one week and the second the next week? Because I found when we did one, went to Deep Space Nine and went back to Poirot, a lot of us would kind of miss what we'd already
Yeah.
seen.
We're
So I'm
doing.
wondering
I
if
think
it would be better to do one week and then the second part the next week.
I'll
just a
I'll
thought.
ask Dana about it. I'm sure Dana won't have any problem watching Poirot 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I'll
because
ask her
it's a
about it
2-hour
because
one.
I'll ask her about it and see what she wants to do. But yeah, I mean, that does make more sense if we're doing a
Yeah.
2-parter.
That two-parter, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll figure something out. Maybe we could start doing, because I think all of the Poirots from now on are going to be like that. They're all like the feature length episodes. So maybe we could do like 2 Poirot and 2 Deep Space Nine and kind of
Yeah.
alternate it that way. Because otherwise we'll be watching twice as much Poirot as we are Star
things
Trek.
like Hercule Poirot's Christmas, you do need to watch the first part and then watch the second
Yeah.
part to have it in your head, because it's not that it's complicated, but they do get involved.
Yeah.
The only
I'll
one
yeah.
I can think that we haven't seen yet. No, we
We
may have
get it
seen
in
it.
the stream.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I can't think of anything. But they're now showing Deep Space Nine again on UK TV, so we've got a whole slew of Star Trek. We've got original
Okay.
series.
Oh, God, Carl, we're
I'm
ending the show.
The
Stop
show's over.
talking.
The show. Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
See you next month. Bye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.
Steve.
Goodbye.
Bye.